whether you're watching on replay, whether you're watching live. I'm going to get into this topic. I started a bit of a debate this morning over on one of the channels. I've got 3 cameras going on here, so do excuse me for flicking around. About can a builder charge a developer for a quotation? Can a builder charge a developer for a quotation for some refurbishment or some construction work? Is the question. So there's been quite a few responses, over 300 responses I've had to this question. I'll pick up on a few. So first and foremost, I'll give my I'll go through the responses first, and I'll give you my opinion at the end. So for me, when a contractor is wanting to charge for refurbishment work or for a quotation for some construction work, they've got to be really, really careful that if they're charging for that service, then that service must be absolutely spot on and impeccable, because I've paid for it. Now, if I'm paying for that quote, it needs to be absolutely right. And if it's not right, and I've paid for it, well, I'm introducing a new risk and a new bit of danger. But I'll just go through some of the comments. So Robert says, it should be, but unfortunately we've been railroaded by the UK press into thinking that it's the normality for builders to have to sit down for 8 hours preparing a quotation for free. So sometimes we have to just fall in line or risk not getting any work. And to be honest, if everybody did charge, it would do the building industry a favour, as it would weed out the tire kickers, and most builders would be happy to refund that fee if they won the work. I think there's some really good points in that comment, but let's jump into what's been typed. So yes, it should be, but unfortunately we've been railroaded by the UK press. I don't think the UK press has ever said that all builders' work should be free. I think it's us as an industry. I think the industry, the construction industry, is so hell-bent on things being free and people advertising that things are free, and therefore it's the industry, I don't think it's the press that do this at all. And we have the power to change that industry, we as members of it. So people in the industry, if you want to start charging for quotes, start charging for quotes. Fuck the media, fuck what the fucking press say. Like, if you want to charge for a quote, charge for a quote. Then it's entirely up to you whether, no, it's not, it's entirely up to the customer, or should I say the potential customer, as to whether they're going to pay for it or not. That's entirely up to them. Next comment says, can I get a taxi across the city for free? I don't think so. Well, I don't think that's a very good analogy, if I'm being honest. Can I get a taxi across the city? Well, a taxi is a service. Is quoting a service? I suppose it is. I don't think it's comparable with getting a taxi, though. So next one says, I personally agree, and I feel that there needs to be levels of cost. Be hard to establish how and when, just so many won't, and that puts you out straight away. Very true. Do other industries quote for quotations? Jason says. I don't know. I'm going to assume yes. Doesn't really answer the question. So my question is, for those just joining, the question is, can a builder charge for quotation? Sir says, if you are to pay for a quotation, then you'd have a right to question and query the contractor if the materials are not enough later on the building process. I completely agree, which is a big risk of charging for a quote, right? But if you don't pay for the quotation when there's a shortage of materials, don't say anything. You just buy, mind you, it was an estimate. All I'm saying is paying for a quote gives the contractor an obligation to give you a most accurate quotation. Totally agree. Hence, they'll have to be very meticulous in doing it. There won't be a lot left over of materials or a shortage of materials. Totally agree. I think that's a really good point. Next, Chris says, as a punter rather than a builder, punter says, I'm a punter. I'd be happy to pay for a quote in the knowledge that if I accept, that builder responds. That's a really good point. I recently had a builder to quote knocking a wall, install steelwork, which I have a structural surveyor calculate, and remove a double chimney breast to the roof. On both visits, he asked if I was going to go through to the council. On both times, I told him yes. I hadn't heard back from him since, and I had everything in place. So yes, to avoid this time waste and happily pay. That's a really good point, and that's from a customer. Customer happy to pay, but wants some guarantees that if he does pay, that same builder is going to come back and respond to that quote. Chris says, I had an argument with a potential customer who wanted me to quote for insurance work on his home. I said I'd charge, but he couldn't understand why I always charge for quotes because it's rare that it comes to anything. Because the customer just wants a figure to settle with the insurance company. I say, if you want a quote, then you pay. If you don't pay, I won't quote. He paid, I quoted, been ghosted ever since. Interesting. I genuinely do see both sides of this. Will I call it a dilemma? I think we can all get around this just by coming together and working together as a collective to deliver a project. Dan says there should be a quote fee, and if the customer accepts the quote, then deduct the quote fee off the invoice. This will sieve out the time wasted. I completely agree with that, Dan. Great point. TJ says, yes, it comes off the bill if should they go ahead with you. Ricardo says it's a dreadful issue. First, because a proper quote takes a long time to do. Second, because everybody quotes differently. And when it's time to compare quotes, everything's been organized differently, unless you ask the designer to produce a scope of works and a bill of quants. Then you should be able to ask everyone to quote on your format. Depending on the job, you may be able to ask for a method statement, and that helps a lot to understand what your builder is proposing to do. Brett says, whatever suits your business and your business plan. Another good point. Getting a lot of people just saying, yes, 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 I should quote. So again, if you're just joining, this question is, should a builder be allowed to charge to pull a quotation together? Leighton says, yes, based on the size of the job and a refundable discount when the contract is awarded. Another great point. I think that's where I'd be at, to be honest. Andrew says, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, and he's absolutely bang on. That's why it's called a debate. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, just like deposits. Builders, do I pay a builder a deposit? It's a whole another topic. However, again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is quite simply a debate, a discussion that I want to spark. I give free ballpark figures on anything and detailed quotes on smaller jobs under and around 15 grand. If the client wants me to work up a detailed quote with quantities and full specs, then I ask them to pay a small fee for my time, with the cost knocked off the final bill if we get the work. I've not lost many jobs over the years with this approach, and it does weed out time wasters. Yeah, I mean, what Andrew said there is there's no right or wrong answer. There is no right or wrong answer, correct. This is quite simply a discussion that I want to spark between developers and builders, because what I truly want to happen as a result of this is I want people to come together. I want the builders to recognize and realize that they are not going to be getting any work if it isn't for the developer that in this space, that is. So without a developer, your builder's a van driver. And without the builder, your developer is a landlord or a landowner. They can't do any work without you. You need each other, is what I'm saying. So to get each other to work together, to dovetail into a partnership, into a collaboration where the builder is working alongside the developer, they're working together. When this happens, like, this question then goes away because we're going to work together anyway. So if we can find a number that works for both sides, then win-win. David says exactly what we were talking about yesterday. So, it must be a common point of a common question people asking. Andy says, if I get an inquiry and the opening line is, do you do free quotes? I'm out straight away because they have no intention of using your services and probably not even having the work done at all. They just want a builder's quote to use their own agenda, i.e. insurance, grant, and house purchase. I couldn't disagree more with that point. If I get an inquiry on the open line is, do you do free quotes? I'm out straight away because they've got no intention. Like, you don't fucking know that at all. You do not know that. They just don't want to pay. Like, and that's fine. If you don't do free quotes, then you don't do free quotes. That's great. That's a decision you've made. But don't make assumptions about your customer, about your potential customer or your potential client. What you're really saying there, I think, is that's what you do. If you're saying that people that ask for free quotes are doing it for their own agenda, that's probably you're talking about yourself and you're pointing it on others. Matty says, free estimate, and it all depends on the level of detail in the quote. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you're watching live as well, by the way. What do you think to this as a question? What do you think to this topic? If you're just joining, I'm asking, can a builder charge for a quotation for construction work I've got estimate no, quote yes, said Mark. Adam says, I think everyone should charge for quotes. It's so infuriating. The amount of time invested going out, looking at potential jobs. It doesn't stop there. Writing them up, working out materials, then emailing the quotes. Fuel costs, I'm not talking about a quick quote to decorate a bedroom, more of a full property refurbishment. Now, here's another school of thought. In all industries, including construction, for you to issue a quote for a service or for a product, that forms part of your sales process. So I'll have you consider that if you're charging or wanting to charge, or you hold a belief that you should be charging people, if you're trying to charge someone for them to enter into your sales process, like, I'd really question that as a consumer. Like, I can't think of any other industry where I would do that. So if I'm going to go, I don't know, if I'm going to go buy a car, for example, I'm going to go into the car garage and say, oh, mate, how much is that car? And he says, I'm not telling you until you pay me to tell you how much it is. Yes, there is, different levels of complexity and simplicity here, but the principle being the same. That is a school of thought. As I said, there's no right or wrong answer to this topic. It is a debate, it's a discussion. I'd love to hear from you. What I'd love to see is developers and builders come together with the realization that they need each other. And because they need each other, let's have a reciprocal service. So maybe you both sit down together and you go, look, sit down together, form a partnership, form some unity. Like, let's look how we can unite instead of fight. Sit down around a table and say, this is my budget, open and honest as a developer, and say, this right here on the table, these are my numbers. This is what works for me. Like, what works for you, Mr. Builder or Mrs. Builder? Like, what number's going to work for you? This number works for me. What number works for you? I'd love to see that. People call me an ideologist, and that's never going to happen. But, it could be right. But that ain't going to stop me from trying. Because if I can create a space where a developer and a builder can come together to sit down around a table and openly discuss money so that both people get the result that they're looking for, like, that's a place that I would love to create. Graham says, go ahead, you won't get invited to quote. Then someone will do a cheaper fee, then it will be a race to the bottom, just like eBay. And then it will be zero. I don't know about that. I guess if I'm paying for a service, I'm paying for a quotation from a builder for a development. Like, I would want to know. In fact, have I ever paid for a quote? I don't think I have, if I'm honest, as a client. I'd want to know. Oh, in fact, no, I have actually. But it's not been a builder, it's been a quantity surveyor and also an architect I've paid as well. I'd want to know what I'm getting for my money. So am I going to pay for a quote, say 200-300 quid, whatever it is, and you're just going to say to me, it's going to be 15 grand, Paul? Like, I won't be happy with that. If for my 200-300 quid, I'm getting a fully broken down quotation with spec, with design arrangements, with written work, all broken down, I think that is now a service that I can value, and I now own the data because I've paid for it. So it's now fair that I have this quotation that I could then go out and get some other market comparison alongside it. All right, next comment. Let's have a look. 420 comments on this post. So if you're just joining, I'm discussing here, should a builder be able to charge a customer for a quotation, or should it be free? I think it has a place. Ben says, I think it has a place. Someone looking at buying a house and wanting a quote before they buy, they should pay. A builder doing an overall checkup on a house where the surveyors don't check everything. Time costs money, and builders have families and kids, etc. to support. Loads more examples. Yeah, I agree with that to a degree. But at the end of the day, quoting is part of your sales process as a builder. So we're either going to build it into the prices across the board, or it becomes a loss leading exercise that we've just got to swallow. For those that don't know me, by the way, I fill both shoes, which is why I've started the debate. So I run a construction business and a development business as well. Yes, time is money. It's a business and not a charity. Interested. Like, I get the message. Daryl says that. I get the message. I just don't think it serves to put your client or yourself in a adversarial mindset, which is how that's come across. Yes, time is money. It's a business, not a charity. Like, let's work together. Work together with your customers, with your developer clients. Depends on the time of the scale of the quote, says Stephen. Agreed, totally. We've got to look at how much time's involved, of course, into pulling this thing together. Like, what methodology have you used? Have you just thrown a square meter rate or something? Like, should you be able to charge for that? I wouldn't say so. Kevin says, back in the day, clients used to send drawings and a bill of quantities along with the scope of works. Now we are expected to do that all for free on the off chance we get the contract. Like, what? That point actually blows my head off a little bit. Let's have a break of that down. So back in the day, clients used to send drawings and a bill of quantities along with a scope of works. Now, in my experience, clients still do that. Well, certainly the clients I work with anyway, they still do that. So if they're not doing that for you, then I would question the people you're talking to. We can't just like blanket every client, like no clients don't do that anymore, because that's not true. They do. And then we've then gone on to say, we are now expected to do all that for free. Who's expected to do all that for free, and by who? Who set that rule? I'll tell you who set that rule. You did. If you're not charging for quotes, then you set that rule yourself. It means that you're starting to do it for free. And if you're doing stuff for free, and even worse, you're marketing the fact that you do stuff for free, people are going to use you for a free service. Of course they are. So no one's expected anybody to do anything for free. It's quite simply the way that you are operating, and then blaming everybody else. That's how that's come across to me anyway. I don't charge for quotes myself, but I think it's a good idea for larger projects. Yep, I agree. Depending once again on how big we're talking, how much complexity is going into it. One thing I would say though is, if you are charging, if you are willing to pay, or you are going to pay for a quotation, for construction work, for a project, as a customer, I personally believe that builder's the wrong person to do that for. You. I would be approaching someone like an architect, a quantity surveyor, an estimator, a surveyor, one of these types of trades, rather than your builder. And the reason for that is all builders price up stuff differently. So unless you're going to be definitely using the person that quotes for you, I don't think the data you're getting back from your builder is going to help you whatsoever. So all those other professionals that I just mentioned, estimator, quantity surveyor, architect, blah, blah, they follow a pricing framework. They follow a structure. They follow a process. They follow an approach to give you a number based on data or methodologies. Whereas in my experience, builders aren't following the same rule book, if you like, whereas these professionals sort of do. And if it's data I'm trying to buy, I would want some independent professional data rather than just paying for a quote, if that makes sense. Lee says builder can do what he wants. It's down to the customer whether they want him to pay or not. Absolutely perfect point. A good way would be to charge 200 if it gets deducted, if they accept. I completely concur with that point, Lee. Definitely. And I think that brings us to a close. I could go on all day about this. The expertise of learning the program, Excel, Bluebeam, measuring off AutoCAD. However, if you're pulling out a tape and charging per square meter, then no cost. Depends the detail you want in the quote. Yeah, I totally agree. I love your username, by the way. Ginger smell like cabbage and fox piss. Interesting. Yeah, so that's coming over on this screen over here. So let's break that down. The expertise of learning the program, Excel, Bluebeam, measuring off AutoCAD. Yes, I totally agree. That's much more detailed than what a quote is going to be, I believe. If you're pulling out a tape and charging a square meter rate, then no cost. Yeah, totally agree. Depends on the detail you want in the quote. I mean, I think that if we're going to be paying a builder for a quotation as a client now, as a developer, if that's happening, then like my belief is that the builder is going to really fall short on the expectations of the customer when they're making a payment for said service. I think that made sense. So let's say 200 quid, somebody mentioned 200 quid in one of the comments over on this other screen. So let's say that builder says, yeah, I'll do your quote, but it's 200 quid. Now, builder takes the 200 quid, starts pulling the quote together. If I'm paying 200 quid for a quote, I want some real detail, like genuinely. Not because I've paid 200 quid, but because I've now paid for a service and not a guess. So like I want to get something back that's tangible. I want to get something back that I can use. I want to get something back I want to get some data back. I want to be buying something for that money. I don't just want to pay 200 quid for someone to say, as the YouTube comments come in there, I don't want to say, like, here's my 200 quid, and they go, yeah, it's going to be 15 grand. I mentioned that earlier. But it's like, if I'm paying a fee for a quote, that quote needs to be bang on. It needs to be based on something. I need to be able to, if I'm then saying to that builder, right, I'm in, like, my quote's 19,452 quid. I want to know that the fee I've paid for that quote is now then therefore deliverable for that fee. And if it's not, like, what have I paid for? So as I've said a number of times during this session, there's no right or wrong answer to this. I wanted to spark some debate because I think it's a great topic to discuss between builders and developers. And as I've said before, what I'd love to see is both parties come together to work together, to unite, not fight, and sit around the table instead of the opposite sides of the table. And, you know, developer saying, look, these are the numbers that I've got in front of me. This is my honest and open budget. And the builder to say, yes, I can deliver what you expect from as the resultant outputs from the deliverables from this project in alignment with that budget. That's what I would love to see. Any more coming in? I've got 4 windows watching here, trying to keep track of comments and questions over TikTok over here, YouTube over here, Facebook over here, Instagram over here. So that's where all the comments are coming from. If nobody's got any more, please do, if you do watch this back, just give me a replay, watching replay below. And I'll see you in the next one. The topic of this video was, can a builder charge for a deposit? I'd love to hear from you. End.